Hello, my name is Mike Hert, and welcome to another edition of The Outpost. My co-host Adam Alexander is not here today. He and his lovely wife Kate are celebrating their wedding anniversary, so they are enjoying some well-deserved time off. I have two great guests today. I have George Gillis, and George is he wears a variety of hats, and I also have Dale McNamee. Now, just to kind of fill in real quick, the goal of the Outpost, I look at two things. One, it is to talk about the disabled American veterans, DAV, talk about Chapter 17, which is the local unit here in Winnebago County. And plus, it's also a good opportunity to showcase our veterans, because each of these veterans have a slice of history within their service, which makes them a very unique member of the population. And everybody's got a story. And so I'm hoping that today we'll be able to hear a little bit of that. So in the meantime, this is fun because when I first got involved with DAV, one of the very first people I met was George Gillis. And so we go back quite a few years. And then back in my days when I was with the famous Red Arrow, Dale McNamee, Dale, you were the operations officer. And and now Dale is active within DAV. And so there's a lot of background with you guys. I guess just to start off a little bit, George, when I think about you, I think about the Marine Corps veteran. You served in Vietnam. I think you were a mortar guy, right?
Yes.
You were working mortars. And then from a DAV perspective, you were a chapter commander, I believe 5 years, correct?
5 years.
And then actually a district. Now, we call it a little different now, but you were a district commander back in the day.
For 4 years.
Yeah, for 4 years. And that was how many chapters were?
We had, at that time, 9 chapters.
Yeah.
In the district.
So that'll keep you busy.
Oh, yes.
And then Dale, you had served, this guy here is Marine Corps, but you're Army.
I was in the Army.
Army, and you served in Iraq and Afghanistan, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And you are an up-and-comer on type of fire guy, and you are the senior vice commander for the chapter.
Correct.
And so I guess we'll kind of run with a little bit. George, can you tell us a little bit about your service in Vietnam? What years were you about?
I was in Vietnam from early November of 1967 to the end of November of 1968.
Wow.
So I went through that Tet offensive that happened over there, and that was quite an experience just in itself. My time over there, I spent up along the DMZ. My base camp was Camp Carroll.
I remember you and I talking about it because I was actually watching, it was the History Channel, and they were having a thing on Vietnam, and you talked about Camp Carroll, and all of a sudden, boom, Camp Carroll came up. I was like, oh, that's where George was. And I think, what did they call it? The Ring of Steel or something to that effect. But I remember there was a name they kind of gave that whole area. I mean, you might know it better than I would.
Yeah, there was a lot of regular NVA up in that area. They come across
regular North Vietnamese Army.
Yes.
Okay.
They come across the DMZ. They come across out of Laos. That's where they hit Khe Sanh the hardest.
Oh, wow.
The ones out of the DMZ hit the eastern side of the mountains.
Wow.
And that's where we were, up along in that area.
Okay, so now you were a mortarman. For non-military folks, how would you describe mortars in a nutshell?
I was in 81 mortars, and the max range on an 81 mortar is 3 miles. We put cover out for squads that are out there doing patrols.
Okay.
Sometimes we need to kind of make sure that they got back to where they needed to get to. They get bogged down in a gunfight. And
I remember one time you talked about that. How many rounds did you send out in a day? I remember you had a number.
Well, there was one day I sent out 29 rounds in an hour, or I mean, at one time before the first one hit.
Wow.
There was a time when all 4 guns put out 1,800 rounds in one night.
Wow.
So a lot of firepower.
Okay. Wow. So you were working the mortar sides of thing. Now, Dale, you were, if we can kind of go back a little bit, you were with the Great Red Arrow Division, or Brigade at that time. And I remember you were the operations officer for the 127th, and you were out of Appleton. And if you could kind of, bring things up to snuff for our wonderful viewers, what was your role? You were with an infantry battalion. And what was your job? Where did you go? Iraq, Afghanistan, and so forth.
Well, actually, before I joined the Army right out of high school.
Okay.
And I went to Germany, and I was on a border unit. That was back when there still was a Iron Curtain back in Germany, and I was stationed along the Czechoslovakian East German border.
Oh, wow.
And when I got done there, I spent 3 years there. Great tour. I got done there. I went to college, and I kind of missed the military. And there was an ROTC detachment there, and I joined ROTC. And when I graduated from college, I also got a commission as a second lieutenant. Went and taught school for a year, but then the opportunity came up to work full-time for the Wisconsin Army National Guard, and I interviewed for the position, and I got that position. So lo and behold, I ended up in Appleton, and again, I was the operations officer there, and I spent 9 years as the operations officer there before I became the administrative officer. So I kind of ran the battalion day-to-day operations for the units from Green Bay down to Fort Atkinson at the time. It was a huge boundary footprint for our battalion at the time. And from there I went to the brigade headquarters, did a tour there, and then I went to the state headquarters, and I was the operations officer, deputy training officer for the state of Wisconsin. And then I got the opportunity to volunteer to go to Iraq, and I went over there with the 172nd Stryker Brigade. It was a Stryker Brigade unit.
Okay, just for our viewers, what's the Stryker Brigade?
When people ask me about the Stryker Brigade, I always say, do you remember the urban assault vehicle in stripes? Well, it's a high-tech modification of that. It's a 8-wheel vehicle, very fast, has a lot of armor on it. It's able to take a punch, so we could go through an IED and just keep rolling. Most of the time, so we could get out of an ambush area. It had a lot of technology in it. You were able to see friend and foe on a computer system that we had. So we had, we were able to be aware of everything that was going around us, even though we were inside the vehicle and not looking out. We could see who was in our area, if we were taking fire from an area that was not, somebody that we knew that was the enemy, and we could adjust accordingly. So yeah, it was just a great all-around vehicle. Right now there's, I can't remember how many brigades. I think we have 5 or 6 brigades of Strykers out there now. But it's just a great vehicle out there.
So where in Iraq were you then about?
I was stationed in Mosul, which is the second largest city in Iraq. It's way up north near the Turkish border.
Yep.
It was my actual post, my FOB was called FOB Courage. And FOB Courage was the Saddam Hussein's northern palace complex. So we had a beautiful palace complex. Everybody had a palace. The brigade headquarters had, of course, the biggest palace and the nicest palace. And then kind of as you worked your way down, the palaces were less and less elaborate and stuff, but it was kind of really neat. We also had two.
You didn't get a palace, George, did you?
No.
No, we had a palace.
We lived a lot in tents.
Actually, it was very ironic because our actual our tactical operations center was in the basement, and there was a swimming pool there, and of course all the water was drained out of the swimming pool, and so we all of our situational awareness stuff, our TVs, our maps, and things were all in the bottom of the pool, and our staff was all the way around on the side, so we could see everything going on that was inside there when we were actually in the talk. So
wow.
it was a lot different probably than George. George was probably, in a GP medium tent with maps on the table and stuff. our technology was much more enhanced by then.
That was more with the infantry group than it was with mortars. We just did a lot of protection for the infantry. So
Yeah. So, now, and then Afghanistan, where were you?
Yeah, I spent about 10 months in Iraq, and then I got a message from the folks in the Pentagon that I was working with, and they had a position become available doing the same type of thing I was doing in Iraq, in Afghanistan. And they said, hey, could you go to Afghanistan for 3 or 4 months to kind of hold down the fort there until we can get another person trained and spun up. And I said, sure. So it was kind of a neat thing. I got on a plane at 6 o'clock in the morning and flew down to Baghdad. From Baghdad, I flew to Al Yasalim in Kuwait.
Yep.
Walked over to the other side of the air base, got on a plane later on that afternoon, and flew to Bagram Air Base, and I got there by midnight. So in one day, I was able to make that whole transition from the most northernmost city in Iraq all the way over to Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. And I spent the next 4 months there working with mostly Afghan army units, trying to help them understand situational awareness on the ground. We used to do something called center of mass or center of gravity analysis, kind of looking at what is it that the enemy needs and wants to hold on to. And of course, in Afghanistan, that's the population. So helping them understand that what we do with the population is going to really impact on our ability to, we used to say, win the hearts and minds in Vietnam, but it's the same type of thing. You got to be able to draw that support away from the Taliban of the civilian population so that they can break away from it. Okay. So that's basically the kind of thing I did. I spent a lot of time with embedded troops and small Afghan army units over on the eastern side of the country.
Okay. George, what was it like for you when you returned home?
When I came home, we landed at Oakland Air Force Base, Travis, and from there they bused us to...
But what was the reception like in Oakland?
I'll get to it.
Okay.
They bused us to San Francisco Airport, and while we were riding on the bus, we got a lot of tomatoes and eggs thrown at the bus and us. Even after we got off the buses at the airport, they told us somewhat not to wear our uniforms. Some of us did, some didn't. And we were not greeted very well. It was a situation that I wish would not have occurred. And because of that, the Vietnam veterans made sure that when the Afghan and Iraq veterans came back, they weren't greeted the same way.
And that's something I just want to jump on real quick. Is I know for myself, and I imagine for Dale. I mean, we had gotten some tremendous homecomings, and I really think it goes back to those Vietnam veterans, because they made sure that this would never happen again to another generation.
That's correct.
I thank you, and I thank those Vietnam veterans that are out there for you guys had our back. You guys had our six. So I really appreciate that. Okay. How'd you guys get involved with the DAV? You kind of have George. Just to jump in, George had one of the iconic persons in the veterans community that you made contact with, and if you could share some of that.
There was a person that was very involved in the veteran community back when I got into the DAV. His name was Ray H. Fuller. He is also the namesake of our chapter. And that was way back in 1985. I met him through a VFW meeting that a guy at work had gotten me into the VFW. And Ray come up to me one night and he says, "You ever belong to the DAV?" And I says, "No, what's that?" And he says, "Follow me." And we went to a table, and he told me all about it. He signed me up that night.
I got to share is Ray Fuller was like a rock star, and I remember I was a young lieutenant, and Doc Sunleitner had got me involved with Memorial Day, and I was doing Logan's Order, and serious. Ray was like 98. He lived to 100, but here he is like 98, 99, doing the Gettysburg Address by memory. I mean, he was just one of the most amazing individuals. He was Red Arrow, World War I, if I'm right. And and he just was so well loved that we literally Chapter 17. We are Chapter 17, Ray H. Fuller, and we're named after him. So Ray got you involved.
So that's how I got involved.
Yeah, and so from there, you really ended up, talking before where you were doing the district side of things for 4 years, chapter commander. What was that? What was your motivation? What about the DAV hit you that you grabbed into it like you did?
I wasn't involved in the first few years because I was raising my family.
Yeah.
And about 20 years ago was when I really started to get involved. It's the only group that I felt that did something for the veterans beyond what other groups were doing. And it gave me a purpose of being able to help. And that's how I got involved.
Okay. And then, what was it for you, Dale, that, you had retired from the military, and all of a sudden it was, and there's a lot of groups out there. What was it that got you to join the organization?
Well, I joined DAV in El Canto County. I was on our way up to our cottage, and they were doing a membership drive up there, and I joined there. And,
okay.
I was not involved for a number of years. I was just a life member of DAV. And then I had been involved with the VFW, I've been involved with the American Legion, but none of those really satisfied me because they were always more involved in other things. American Legion does baseball, VFW was off doing their own thing. And then I went down to a meeting down in Winnebago County. Of course, Mike, you were there.
Yep.
Some other people that I knew in the military were there. And then I saw how veteran-centric.
Yep.
We focus on the veteran, and that's all we do. We work to make their lives better. We advocate for them. We work for them. I'm a veteran service officer with the DAV, and I spend a lot of time helping veterans with that.
Just to kind of time out, because this is kind of a neat, where there's different angles to the service with these two gentlemen here. But Dale is we have national service officers. We actually have chapter service officers. So you are a chapter service officer for Chapter 17. What does that entail, and what does that mean to those people that are watching the show right now?
Well, what veteran service officers do at the chapter level is, we've been specially trained by our national service officers down in Milwaukee. They work full time for the DAV, and that's they process claims and things like that. So we do the same thing. We are certified through them to go out and work with veterans. Talk about what kind of benefits are out there, what kind of claims they have. We can do all the fill out all the claim forms in. We send them down to them, and that starts the process. Whether it be for just getting into the VA system, whether that be filing a claim for compensation, whether that's working with them to access other benefits that are out there that they can get into. We also we have some knowledge. We're really not experts in that, but we can hook them up with some of the state stuff that's out there, some of the state benefits that are out there. But basically, we advocate for them. We help them get all their claims and things. If it's something that we can handle, we can turn them over to either a county veteran service officer or to our national service officers down in Milwaukee. Because we're way up here, it's hard for them sometimes to go way down to Milwaukee to see somebody. So sometimes, working with a county service officer is maybe a better thing to do. But yeah, we just try to get them hooked up with all
you have
the
that
benefits.
ability that if a viewer contacted and said,
Definitely.
hey, I want to kind of explore this, you could kind of get some things kicked off with them.
What I normally do is I'll sit down with that veteran and I'll just say, tell me your story. Let's start at when you enlisted to when you got out, all the places you've been, because sometimes, depending on where a person is actually stationed, there are benefits for that. My wife's uncle was stationed in Camp Lejeune in the 50s, and he had Parkinson's disease, and I went back and I started taking a look, and lo and behold, they had contaminated water in Camp Lejeune during that time period.
Yep.
And so they had a presumptive illness for Parkinson's disease. So even though he never served in war or anything else, he was entitled to a lot of benefits just because of that. So yeah, it depends on sometimes of where you're stationed, especially Vietnam veterans.
Well,
with
and
Agent
that's
Orange and
something
those
I'd like
types
to
of
spend a
things.
little bit of time between the both of you on, because, especially to our Vietnam veterans and to their family members, this is some good information. But like with Agent Orange, I know George and I were, before the show, we were kind of talking a bit, and I this is just my talking, but sometimes I think the whole Agent Orange thing is a lot bigger than what we realize, because the impact on the veterans community and the Vietnam veterans is just, it's been in some ways horrendous in terms of all the things that's happened. What, I guess starting off, George, what have you seen with Agent Orange when, as you grew up in the DAV system to this now, the awareness and so forth?
I've seen a lot of Vietnam veterans come down with cancer. Their lives are taken way too early. There's other presumptive diseases that are associated with Agent Orange. I've got a claim in right now, and some of the stuff hits later in life, and we need to help take care of them veterans and let them know what is out there.
Okay. So, from filing claims with Vietnam veterans, how have you seen the whole issue of Agent Orange, Dale, from your perspective?
If I go back and look at the history of Agent Orange, I mean, the VA didn't acknowledge it for a number of years, and then they did, and the presumptive list is continuously growing. I mean, they just added hypertension to it, and a couple other ones. It also, there's children of veterans that get some benefits too. If they're born with spinal bifida, those things are all linked to Agent Orange. So, those children, we're going down a generation again that are getting benefits. And I also kind of link it to, we talk about burn pits for us in Iraq and Afghanistan. Yep. They're just exploring that now. Now we're hoping that, with Congress and things, that's not going to take as long as it did with Agent Orange, as it did for that.
Well, I think, a good example how, it is just me, but how, it took way too long, but just talk about was Blue Water Navy.
Yeah, Blue Water Navy.
Yeah, I mean, unless you had a footprint in the ground like you had, George, they weren't going to acknowledge it. But, that's the thing with Agent Orange. How did it get there? I mean, those barrels had to travel multiple sites. I can remember one person talking about that the helicopters would come on to the ships and they'd wash them down right there on the ship, and people got exposed. You were going to say something, George.
I was going to say that I made sure my son got involved with the burn pit registry and that, because he went to Iraq early, and he went through, he said he was right next to a big burn pit area, and he's had some stomach problems already, some lung problems, so he is getting disability. Not as much, I think, as he should be getting, but
I think
it's tying the two generations of fathers and sons in the same
And with Iraq,
type
Afghanistan,
of situation.
daughters.
Yes.
Don't forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you're bringing up a good point though too. Is that with Vietnam veterans, Iraq, Afghanistan veterans, it's so important to meet with that chapter service officer, that national service officer, to find out, because too often, they don't realize that there's these conditions and they're getting affected, and they don't realize that there are those benefits available to help them out. Yeah, what are you going to say?
We also can't forget the Gulf War veterans, Gulf One.
Yep.
They've had a lot of problems coming back too. I mean, you have a lot of things out there, PTSD and stuff like that, that all veterans, I think, struggle with sometimes. But they've had a lot of issues with health concerns from some of the stuff that they got on the battlefield. The smoke and stuff from oil fires and things like that. So they're dealing with that too.
All the oil rigs were put on fire back then.
We can't forget about those guys either. So there's Vietnam, then there's the Iraq War, then there was Iraq War I, then Iraq II, and Afghanistan. It covers that whole spectrum, and we go all the way back to Korean veterans. I mean, there's still Korean veterans these days that are still working on getting some of their benefits.
Well, and I remember the in a way, kind of the group that started a lot of things off. I think they called them the atomic veterans, and that was the testing blasts that they used to do with the nuclear weapons. And I remember reading the stories where guys were in the vicinity and they could actually put their hands up and see through them. That's scary stuff, But then all of a sudden, years later, all of a sudden, boom, boom, them being impacted, and the mortality rates was just horrible.
Oh yeah.
So, but that's the key. Like you're saying, DAV has been involved with making those changes, and I can tell you, as having been involved as a past department commander, DAV walks the steps of Congress, and we will be in Washington D.C. and we bring up the needs. We on the local level, we hit the state capitol. We've all been to the town hall meetings where we meet with our state and federal elected officials. And I think we do a great job of that legislative side of things and meeting the needs of our veterans.
And we also make sure that we do the action.
Commander's Action Network.
For the different legislation that's out there. Make sure you get a hold of your Congress people and your senators and that.
Yeah.
To pass some of this stuff that affects veterans. It doesn't necessarily have to be a monetary thing. It just something that is proper and on the medical side to make sure they're covered.
Right. I agree with what you're saying, is that I think you'd said it best with the Agent Orange is, unfortunately, with some of these things, they plant seeds that pop up later in life, and all of a sudden when you're talking about the burn pits where, these different materials are deposited in the lungs and you may not feel it initially, but boom, they come and get you later. So, we're starting to wind up into our final minute. Is there a message that each of you, we have a unique moment right now. You are in front of a great group of viewers. Is there something you'd like to leave with them about the DAV? Why get involved with the DAV? Why support the DAV?
I would say that we need to help veterans in any way we can, whether it's through the community and teaching them what we know and letting them know that we need the support of the people.
Okay. Dale?
Like I said when I first started, we're veteran-centric. We focus on the veterans. We're here to help veterans. We try to make their life better, and that's just the kind of thing that we do. Whether it be helping a veteran with electric bill or something like that, we can do small things like that, or it's helping them get a claim through. We focus on the veterans, trying to make their lives better. We don't look at anything else. That's all we do is try to improve our veterans' lives. We advocate for them, and that's kind of what we just focus on.
Okay.
And that's why I love the DAV.
All right. Well, with that, we'll cap things off. Gentlemen, thank you for being on the show. You know, you're truly rubber meets the road warriors with supporting our veterans in the community. So my name is Mike Hert. That wraps up another edition of The Outpost. Have a great day.
Thank you.